Three, two, one. We are live.
And welcome to episode 7 of the new podcast, How Do You Know That, with Robert Hollis. We are so glad to have you with us today. And before we get things going, if you are watching us on YouTube, please hit that like and share button, as well as subscribe button to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, if you are listening to us elsewhere in the podcast universe, please like and share this with friends and help us spread the word. Also, if you would like to join our exclusive community, the Inner Circle, you can join us by going to roberthollis.com/join to register. And there will be lots of great exclusive content, and you'll be able to participate in our special breakthrough sessions to help you move to the next level. Today, episode 7 of How Do You Know That with Robert Hollis, and our topic is, especially after the 4th of July, freedom isn't free. Something to think about. Now, allow me to introduce our host of today's show. He is an entrepreneurial evangelist, renowned for his incredible achievements. He is also known for inspiring countless of individuals around the world with his unwavering determination and spirit. And he has also helped 67 people as of this date become millionaires. Known as a mentor, a GPS to success, and a dear friend, ladies and gentlemen, Robert Hollis!
Craig, thank you so much. The hostess with the mostest. I appreciate you so much. And we got Matt running all the stuff in the background. So Matt, I love and appreciate you. And I really, really love this topic. I'm willing to admit that I'm one of those individuals that grew up, in the 70s, you know what I mean? So, I was born in 1962 and just around a bunch of patriotic people and you become who you hang around. So, I also grew up in racing. And even when we went across the border to Canada to race cars, then they would sing the Canadian song, "Oh Canada." And I thought it was so amazing when I first heard the national anthem of not only Canada, but also for Great Britain. I was going, wow, this sounds really familiar. And so just change a little bit of words. And I always thought, what would be the ultimate to somebody is not only do you take the colors of their flags and you rearrange it, but then you take their theme song and you rearrange and change the words. It's like, not only did we make ourselves free from you, but we want to keep reminding you that, hey, we used to be a part of this. And I know that a lot of people might not understand freedom. I, without getting on my soapbox, will just say this. If you need to work with us and follow what we're sharing with you so you can have true freedom, because freedom, if you wrote down freedom, I believe that freedom is not only being free to do what you want when you want to do it, but a lot of people will find this probably pretty controversial. But before the Great Depression, before the 1930s, this country actually worked on sort of the bartering system. And so what they would do is, if somebody was a carpenter or somebody, shoed horses, or if someone grew crops, everyone would barter for services. And that's the way the harvest came from. If you guys ever know what the harvest came from, and Thanksgiving was everybody got together to harvest and celebrate another good year. And all the people from out in the country would come into the town square, which the towns were pretty small. And that's where everyone would get to know each other. And then I get to go, oh, well, Craig does some MC stuff if I'm ever deciding to play some instruments or stuff, or do a maybe politician or something. I can get Craig to do some of that. And then we can just barter. And a lot of people, when I said this is controversial, do you realize that the bartering system is still happening in this day and age? It's just with politicians and lobbyists. And no one wants to talk about that, right? So all of a sudden, when the Great Depression happened, now all of a sudden, people are hurting for food. They don't know how to be able to take care of their families. And so now all of a sudden, these great big corporations and people that had money come up with an idea of employing people. What if we could actually employ them? And now they have to ask when they can go on vacation. They have to ask when they get to take a break. Do you guys know, even in this day and age, there's some contracts that people sign for corporations that will not allow them to do a side hustle. Is that crazy? And so if you're in certain industries like finance or insurance, they make them sign a contract that it's a conflict of interest for them to be involved in anything else that would produce income for them and their family. So it's like we live in a day and age where there's more and more freedoms being taken away. And they're being taken away because the government believes that they can make better decisions than the humans. And so a lot of people don't realize that. I tell people all the time, if you could ever travel to another country, your mind would be blown. Like the time that I spent in the Philippines or the Malaysia or Thailand, and every house you walk into, every house has the picture of the emperor. Every place does, because it's the law. So can you imagine if someone today in America, just little tiny things, right? That doesn't seem like big, but how many of you would probably be a little pissed off if you got fined? Somebody knocked on your door, they came in with a warrant, they go through your house and they give you a fine and take you to jail because you don't have a picture of Joe Biden on your wall. And I'm not picking on Joe Biden. We could go back a couple of years and you would have had to have a picture of Trump on your wall. And it's like, so, there's little things like this that a lot of people don't recognize, that our freedom should be more expanded than what you think it is. So in your definition of freedom, what would be your ultimate deciding factor for freedom? Because I'll throw one more in there. When I heard this statement, it was like one of those statements that just hit me to the core. We hear the phrase, money doesn't buy happiness, but we also know that poverty doesn't buy anything. So one of the things that I heard, and it was actually from Joe Rogan, and him and Elon Musk were talking, I believe, and they go, Joe Rogan said, I'm just not in despair anymore. So we do talk about the freedom of you as a human being, but how about freedom of not having negative thoughts, freedom of not worrying, freedom of not being scared, freedom of being really free? So there's a lot of people out there now that I believe that the awareness in the United States is more about mindfulness. It's like people are now going, wait a minute, I went out and got 2 brand new cars. I got a couple of brand new homes. People are going, Robert, who are you talking about? Reel that back in a little bit, and it's like, all of a sudden you like mentally, you're like, wow. So having a bunch of money really doesn't make you free. Think about that. I see Matt, he'll be on here in a second, but I see Matt nodding his head, and it's like, so people are going, and again, kudos to Craig for coming up with the concept of if only, right? So people are like, if I won the lottery, you know what I mean? I got 10 after taxes, everything, lawyers, I just have $50 million in the bank. And people would go, there's still people out there that say, well, I'd still keep my job. And why do you think they say that? Programming. See, they're like people that are retired. When they retire and they get the watch and they're told to go home, they don't have any purpose anymore. They don't have any passion. They don't feel any worth anymore. Does that make you free? So not only freedom is something that needs to be thought about, but your definition of freedom needs to be thought about. Because, you know, I sent Matt and my wife, Terry, a video by Jay Shetty. And Jay said he listened to these statistics, you guys. It said that the test was, you either get the choice of being alone with your own thoughts, no phone, no nothing. And you had to be alone with your own thoughts. And if you press this button, you would get a shock, but then you were allowed to be distracted. 60% of the men said, I'll take the shock. 40% of the women said, I'll take the shock. It's like people don't even know how to have freedom within their own thoughts. We're so programmed to go from distraction to distraction to distraction to distraction, then to worry, to worry, to worry, to anxiety, 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 to fear, to fear, to fear, to anxiety, anxiety, anxiety. You see what I'm talking about? You know, I know that when we got on here, it was talking about freedom, but man, the very first thing you need to do is work on you to establish that freedom within your own spirit and your own soul. Because you're not going to understand what a true definition of freedom is for you and your family until you're really, really spiritually or soulfully free. So I don't know where that came from, Craig and Matt, but you guys go ahead.
I'll let Craig go first. Craig?
Okay. Well, you know, what I love, Robert, is, yeah, freedom really is just, you know, being free to be able to do what we would like to do, of course, within the confines of society and things like that. I looked up the definition of freedom, and it's an interesting definition. From Merriam-Webster, it says the quality or state of being free, such as, here we go, the absence of necessity, coercion, or constraint in choice or action, liberation from slavery or from the power of another, boldness or of conception or execution, a political right.
I love when you said free from another.
And exactly when
Yeah,
the way
we
you
talk
said that
about-
opening was
we
perfect.
talk about slavery, but now you're tied down to a mortgage, you're tied down to rent, you're tied down to a car payment, insurance that if you ever don't pay it, it's against the law. But if you do pay it, need to use it, they find a way not to let you do it.
Or if you're a student in school, here's another one, because if you're a student in school, let's say that you as the parent want to take your child out for whatever reason you want. That's great. But you have to be able to say, okay, but the school is not going to get paid for that student. That's because they're not there at school. So now you have to get a waiver from the government that says, okay, I'm going to homeschool my child.
People don't even know. I mean, I know a lot of people have probably never heard this phrase. Craig and I get to go back there, but there was a thing called a truancy officer.
Oh gosh, yes.
And so when you skip school, their sole job was to find you.
Because the school district would not get paid their allotted amount of money because you weren't there. You may be in a school of 1,000 people, and that school gets paid maybe 50 cents per student each week as part. I'm just throwing numbers out there, but
I
this is
had
the
no
concept.
idea.
Yeah. So if you are away from school and the school wants their money that they're getting from the state or the government, oftentimes, if you don't have a valid excuse, if you don't say that you're sick, if you don't say that you're with your parents, you're going to the doctor, you're on a field trip, if there's no excuse, that school district does not get paid the money for that particular day.
Why I had to get a written notice from my
Isn't it funny that you're talking about all this stuff and it's like the incentive is not to make sure that the kid gets education and that's why they're skipping, but it's financial reasons is why they got to hunt your ass down.
They wrap it around that. I mean, there is
Right.
okay. That's the thing is, there is a purpose for school, obviously,
right.
and and I totally agree with it. But when I heard this concept is that no, they don't get paid, and so they want to get paid, so they get the money. It makes you think, wow, where is the freedom here? Are we actually free, or even? All right, I think I don't know when we're going to get into this on this podcast, but the freedom to say things, the freedom to do things we want to do, and yes, we are allowed to say certain things, but can you honestly say, and this is the definition of the freedom of speech, can you yell out fire in a crowded theater?
Of course not. It's illegal, right?
You can't say fire on Twitter.
You can't say a lot of things. And here's where George Carlin was such a master. And he set a whole thing up with the 7 dirty words. I will not say them on this podcast. So you guys don't worry about it. And
just Google it.
Yeah, just Google the 7 dirty words by George Carlin. You can even probably watch the routine on YouTube. But
no doubt,
back in the day when George came out with those words, there was nothing to say, you can't say these words on television. And then all of a sudden people got up in arms. And the thing was, these words were broadcast on a radio station late at night. So the programmers actually had the forethought to not share these words in the middle of the day when everybody could hear them. So they thought, all right, fine. If I share these words after, let's say, 11 o'clock at night, then
who made
more
up
than likely the kids are asleep.
Who made up these rules?
Yeah. Well, because of that, and because of the lawsuit that, oh my God, my children will be hearing this song or this routine. FCC came up with the rules of the 7 dirty words. And that is mostly why back then you could not say certain words. Now, since then, a couple of those dirty words have been appearing on television. And if you remember the show NYPD Blue, there were a couple of those words said, as well as a little bit of like side nudity.
Yeah.
Usually at 10 minutes before the 11 o'clock hour on wherever that show was broadcast, but it was tasteful. And it was said in certain words, certain ways. So, yeah, I mean, it's incredible how we're free to say things. We're free to do things, but wait a minute.
Well, like me growing up in the 2000s, right? Like majority 2000s. I was like a teenager and a young adult, at the beginning of social media and at the beginning of the internet really having a stranglehold over the way we communicate and the way that we share things. So it's really interesting when you say stuff like that, because it's actually exactly what's happening to social media now is similar, where they're like, YouTube will say, listen, you can't do these things within this amount of time or else you'll be demonetized. Like one of the things out there is within the first 10 seconds of a broadcast, you can't say like the F word, right? Really weird rule. But I guess they just wanted to stop people from getting on live and just being like, just immediately saying the word. I don't know. First 10 seconds someone gets on, but growing up in a time where a lot of that freedom that had been taken away was then given back to like my generation in a way. Because if you watch like old YouTube videos or you watch old social media stuff, you realize very quickly how like unhinged it is, right? And this was for no money. These people weren't making money off of it, right? Like there
Right.
was no monetization to have for the content that they'd make. So they would just kind of make it out of their own creativity. And one of the funny things about like trying to stop kids from hearing bad words is that they hear them from their friends and every moment they're not around you. Like that's the reality. And you see a lot of people almost taking away the freedom to be a kid from their kids,
Right.
right? There's this whole like hovering thing. And it's funny because I'm a millennial, so I have to sometimes hear from the older generations, oh, if we could take over the country really quickly if all millennials had to write things in cursive or do this or that. And it's like, you do know why we don't write in cursive as you, right? Like you do know the reason that millennials don't write in cursive is because it was taken out by the generation before. It wasn't taught by the generation before like it was taught to your generation. So there's this generational thing of taking away freedoms or doing things. And I always find it fascinating because now my generation's doing it to the younger generation. So I get to have that new thing where you see people from Gen Z kind of picking and choosing certain things that I I'm on that end of the spectrum now where there's all these things that my generation used to say on the internet and do that are completely unacceptable now. You
Right.
know what I'm saying? And that in some ways is okay because it was kind of taking the freedom away from other creators or other people, but then at the same time, it's now a reflection on me the way that we've treated the older generation, like the millennials treat the older generation. It's like, wow, I can kind of see that bridge now between what you guys did great and what you guys didn't do great, and what we've done great so far and what we haven't done great so far. What freedoms we've given back and what freedoms we've taken away, right? So I think as someone who grew up completely on the internet, freedom for me it has been kind of great, I guess, as far as freedom of speech. I don't think there's ever been a time in human history that speech is more free than it is now. Like, you really can say anything you want. Now, facing repercussions for what you say is something that people don't seem to grasp, right? They don't seem to grasp. They're like, "Well, I should be able to say anything I want. Isn't this a free country or isn't this a free space to say these things?" Yes, you can. But if someone wants to fire you or someone wants to get rid of you because of the things that you say, that's also freedom. Freedom of them to decide who they want to represent them and not represent them. So, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys having had both ends of that spectrum, right? Growing up where, listen, if someone said the F word on a broadcast and no one was watching it, or the people that were watching it didn't care, it's not like a recording of that broadcast almost always existed for people to go through and shuffle through, right? It's that the permanence of what
But
you say is
really,
is so severe now,
yeah.
right? Like you
When
say
we're
something
talking
and
about,
delete a tweet and it's still there.
yeah,
Someone saved it.
yeah,
So
when we're talking about freedom of speech, it's very, very interesting because um, whatever powers we want to talk about that's out there, if you do say something that will offend somebody, they do seem to find it. It is because,
they'll find stuff from years ago that you
yeah,
said, even though
yeah,
you
Look at the
changed as a
politics
person.
today. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There was I seen this girl comedian the other day, and she got up and she says, "Yeah, I'm really scared about the cancel culture." She says, "I remember in school they used to always have us sit like this," and she crossed her legs, and she says, "I'm not gonna say it. I'm not going to say it. How am I sitting?" And someone out of the audience said, "You're sitting in Indian style." It's like, and all of a
Yeah,
sudden,
I
it's
know
like,
it as what crisscross applesauce is what they called it for me.
I know it as Indian style too. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, let's all, and the teacher would say that. Let's all sit on the floor in Indian style. And it's like, wait a minute. The Indians are going to find this offensive.
Look what happened to the Washington football team.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
This
you
is
have
it, the
the
Washington
Redskins.
Redskins. Yes.
No, yeah,
And
and people fought about that. They're like, "Well, I should have the ability to name a team whatever I want." But then the realization that you're almost taking away the freedom from a whole group of people that have already been marginalized
yes.
for your own freedom. And this is something I know that we'll get into because the truth is freedom isn't free because sometimes your freedoms cost the freedoms of others.
Right.
And
Exactly.
that's something, whether it's us all sitting here and getting to say what we want while people fight for our ability to do that, right? Like that's a cost that we're all aware of that is paid for us to be here, right? So because of that cost, it automatically is not free. But to think that some of the things that we do, the freedoms that we enjoy are not free because they cost things from others is almost like a mindset thing you have to think about. Like the things that you're taking from others and then giving back to those people, giving them the freedom that you're allowed, right? So, I don't want to get all into the politics shit automatically, but like my mind immediately goes to all of the laws and things that are being passed or changed in the United States right now to take away other people's freedoms without the forethought that the way that that leads is to you having your freedoms taken away.
Yeah.
That you're setting a precedent that this is okay to do, and that it's only when you're in power, when the people that you like are in power, that it serves you. But the moment they're not in power, you best believe they're going to come after the shit that you want to keep. You've
And that's
upset
what the
these people.
forefathers in
So,
the US tried
absolutely.
to eliminate, especially when we came up with the Constitution and the Bill of
Right.
Rights and the Articles of Confederation, because they wanted the majority. Yes, they knew there were going to be people who had different opinions and different thoughts about things. But how do you best, in a society like the United States, how best can you get along? Each state is different. We talked about this in the last podcast, how
Right.
each state has its own culture, its own difference from all the other
Right.
states. But we exist as United States because we accept the plurality, the majority of the rules that benefit most everybody. At least we should.
No, the organized chaos, yeah, the organized chaos is honestly what made us thrive. Right? Like
Right.
there's the reason that the United States is the powerhouse of the world is because of that. And a lot of people have lost sight of that. They look at the United States decaying in a way in power and they go, well, I want to take it back to when certain people had less rights. It's like the rights weren't the reason. The reason is that the prosperity that was here was better and the rights that were here were better for some people than in other places, and they flocked to the United States. Immigrants in mass, some of your family members,
Yep.
some of your
Still,
ancestors
still to
did
this
that.
day, still to this day, in every country that I've ever talked to a person from another country, is they're still trying to get relatives and family to the United States. There's not one country that I've ever been to where there's not a group of people that go, I'm just okay hanging out right here. So it's neat that there's all this propaganda in the world, and me and Matt have had discussions about this along with his younger brother Kyle, and they always bring up, Dad, that there's countries that are their lifestyle and their happiness is way better. Their whole living situation is better than the United States. And my mind is, well, I've been to that country, and they want to move.
Well, it depends on where you're looking, right? Because like I think with countries like Denmark and stuff, and I'm not saying that we need to be like these countries. What I'm saying is that they saw what we did and they took it and ran with it and adapted
Yeah,
to the world that we're living in now. And you wonder how things you have the decay of like education and all these things in the United States. It's because the competition aspect in a way has kind of been taken out of it. Like, let's be for real here. A lot of things work off competition, even though, you should be competing
yeah.
against yourself. We all know that's the best mental place to be in. But when you stop competing on the world stage in certain things, when you've been the creator of those things, it's kind of interesting. And I think that that tends to happen when you have a whole group of people that are now kind of flocking to other places,
Right.
right?
Well,
And we used to be
there's a
that place. Not that
yeah.
it's still not that way,
Mhm.
right? But it is less than it's been before. The American dream aspect of the United States is not exactly as great as it used to be. The prospect of it is not exactly as great as it's supposed to be. Doesn't mean the country sucks, but the prospect of
I
it isn't.
believe though, Matt, you and I have had this conversation. I believe that's 100% based on the perspective of the person because
See
you
that
can
I
talk
think this is the
you
generational difference
yeah,
between
because
us.
you can talk to people that are your age or younger that are right now making millions of dollars on YouTube, and they think that the United States is pretty cool. They go to other countries, and the country won't even allow you. There's YouTube videos that I put online, and as soon as I put them online, this thing pops up, and it says, "You do know that this video is not allowed in certain countries." There's
No,
the
yeah, there's definitely
I'm
regulations
talking
against
I'm
things.
talking
Right.
Europe. I'm
Mhm.
talking Europe, not Russia or China.
Right. No, no, I get that, there's and I said this in the last podcast, right? A country's decision and its people's decision on what they consume and how things are run are their decision.
Mhm.
If they wanna overthrow the government, if they wanna vote somebody in that has different things, the only difference between them and us in a lot of ways is this. And I think this is totally fabricated on purpose. Sounds a little conspiracy, but it really isn't. That we've gotten to this place where we're now competing internally in somewhat of a de facto intelligence civil war in the United States, where it's like, well, it needs to be this or it needs to be that, instead of simple, easy points like why aren't, and I said this last time, why aren't school lunches free for children? Why wouldn't that exist? We don't need more jets. We don't need any of these things. Not to say that we don't need a military to keep us safe, but let's invest in the people in the next generation. So then when they come up, they had it better than the generation before. So then on the world stage, they get to compete. If you dumb down, right.
I don't know who paid for it, Matt, but I know my parents didn't pay for my meals at school. And I also know this. If I didn't eat at school, I wouldn't have ate.
I was the
Yeah.
same way. I had to bring
So
my bag lunches every single day or
so
lunchbox or buy from the cafeteria.
it's
Right.
interesting where everything has to do with this freedom and like you said, the cost of it. It was funny when you first mentioned the cost of freedom. Um,
Sure.
Immediately my first thought in my mind is I go, yeah, it costs you when you break a freedom. You know what I mean? So, get pulled over with no seatbelt, get pulled over with no helmet, you know, like, you will get an immediate cost.
Well,
No,
and
there's
okay,
obviously
what was
rules
the
on things, right?
reason for that too? If you remember what the reason was for, the seatbelt or the helmet was because the government was getting saddled with whatever costs were involved with, for lack of a better way of saying it, cleaning up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, if you know lead in gasoline and in things is bad, and you go, we should outlaw that happening, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
it's bad. And then say let's put it in modern times. Then you have a whole group of people go, actually, even though I don't have a lot of information on it and I'm not a scientist, I think lead is good in gasoline and that we shouldn't outlaw it. As a matter of fact, it's cheaper and they're taking it away from us, the opportunity to choose for our freedom. It's like,
Gas stoves.
yeah, it's like, actually, maybe we should listen to the people that worked their whole lives to get to this place,
Right.
to then, everybody, there's certain things that are absolutely politically fucked up, right? Like
Well,
where there's
I know that
dark hands at play to get things to go the way they want.
I
Go
know
ahead,
that
Dad.
I ate paint chips and
No, I always say it's like the trifecta, right? It's like the generation before had lead, then it was asbestos for you guys, and then it's microplastics for us. So we
yeah.
all kind of get screwed by things that shouldn't be there, right? That are bad for us, but they are. And it's like at some point you have to outlaw certain things for the sake of everybody. And so like when you bring up the seatbelt, Craig, that's like one of those things, right?
Mhm.
It's like, even though the cost, it absolutely probably was decided, like you said, by the cost it costs the government to pay for these people that are getting in accidents without seatbelts, because that always gets passed on if they can't afford it, right? So
Right.
we
Right.
pay
If
for
you
it in
don't
our
have the money
taxes.
for it, exactly. It comes out of the taxes or it comes out of the local government because somebody, some idiot, however you want to put it, did not put on their seatbelt, did not put on their helmet, and it looks ugly and it got all the attention. And who has to clean it all up?
Yeah, when you're arguing about helmet laws, because I love riding motorcycles, and then you get to watch Gary Busey talk for about 5 minutes.
Oh no.
It
Yeah.
That's
definitely
right.
makes me want to put on a helmet. That's for sure.
No,
Or
yeah.
Robert, do you remember riding in the back of a pickup truck without having to worry about a seatbelt?
Right in the back
Or
window of a car. You got to ride on
okay,
in the back. Yeah.
yeah. I
To
No,
show
mean,
you
yeah.
how smart our generations was, the station wagon had the rear seat facing the other direction.
yes, I remember
We're gonna get
traveling
back
cross
to that
country with
once.
my
Yeah.
mom on that.
So,
Yes.
so
I
no
was gonna
seat
say.
belt. So when the car got rear-ended, the kids went right through the back window.
Oh man. No, I think that
And
shit
we're
will come
laughing.
back.
We're laughing.
Well,
I'm sorry.
but it will come back. AI will run all these cars and drive them, and then all of a sudden the seats will flip back around again, and we'll have like these little living room type things we drive around in eventually. But like I think one of the most interesting things about you guys sharing this stuff is it's just a common reminder that like everything is progressing, but it's progressing, incrementally, but in a good way, which is kind of something to keep in mind. Like a lot of people always think that certain things, those freedoms are being taken away from them, but them coming up for debate and stuff is another signal, as long as we listen to the majority, a signal that it's like we're going in the right direction.
Right.
I think it's only a problem when you have a small minority of people go, everybody needs to have what I dictate as freedom.
Right.
That is not okay in the United States that I live in, and it will never be okay in my opinion. Like the moment that you start trying to take away the opportunity to read something that somebody wants to read, the opportunity to do what they want to do and be who they want to be, especially if it doesn't impact you in a negative way outside of mentally or
Amen.
spiritually.
Yes.
Just like,
I always thought it was pretty funny.
yeah.
The first time that I heard that, Florida has been on the map for this. But, when I heard that there were certain school systems where they are burning books, and the first thing that I thought to myself is like, do these people even know about Amazon?
Yeah, and the Streisand effect, that by destroying books that are, yeah, by
What
destroying
what book
something,
are
you're
you getting rid of that I can't find, on the
right.
internet? That's like it's pretty
Well,
crazy. So like you got um the big thing that we're always talking about freedom too is like, everyone is on social media, and then social media gets to make up their mind whether or not. I don't think there's one person that would watch this video live or recorded forever that hasn't posted something on Facebook and they said that you were basically breaking some kind of terms and conditions and that they were going to hide it from people. And then you go all the way through the whole post and you're going, I don't know what they're talking about. It's like, I do know some people that go, hey, I was hoping to get away with posting that, and they caught me. But I'm talking about posts that I posted where there isn't anything that they're saying that I did. So of course this might be an algorithm or some kind of AI or whatever that thought it caught something that I was trying to put on there, and I wasn't. You know what I mean? But people are talking about freedom, and I thought that I would just say to all the people in the chat, whether you're on here live or recorded, my question to each and every one of you is do you feel like you're free? Do you feel like you're free? Maybe put, I don't know, a fire emoji or a thumbs up emoji or a heart emoji. Put any kind of emoji. So, where, and it's like, because here's something else that I've noticed, Matt, with mindset, because we focus so much on mindset.
Sure.
I thought it was pretty interesting that virtually, hundreds of thousands of people, work in the community that I work in. And when someone says that we got to typecast some characters and they're like, who's going to play Happy? And everybody at the same time says Robert Hollis. And it again, for those of you that might not know this, there was things that happened. If you go to roberthollis.com/free and get a copy of my book, you're going to hear in that book where not only was I taken away from my parents and actually grew up on an Indian reservation, which was a lot of stuff that I've never seen or been exposed to before, but because I hung out with the wrong kind of people, I ended up being incarcerated for over a year in a federal penitentiary. So my perception of freedom, I've noticed over the years, is very, very different compared to other people's perceptions of freedom. And that not only comes with the gratitude and the appreciation of that. So, there's people that will watch this video live or recorded that if I asked them if they felt like they were free, they would probably say no. And my answer would be, why? Why don't you feel free? And do you really truly believe, because that's something I've had to help Matt and Kyle really become critical thinkers on. Because if you hang around the wrong propaganda and the wrong group of people, they can actually convince you that you're not free, that you have no options. So they've always done these two studies that are scientific studies where you take a jar and you put a bunch of fleas in the jar, poke holes in the top, and then you just let that jar sit there for a couple hours. Then you take the lid off, and every flea in there has the capability of jumping out of the jar, but they hit their frickin' heads too many times. So now their jumping goes to the exact level, and you take the lid off and none of the fleas will jump out. I don't need that kind of headache hitting my head. And the same way they train elephants. They take this giant log chain that they drag around logs with, and they put it around the little elephant's leg. And so everywhere it goes, it feels this resistance. It knows exactly how far it can go. And when it gets older, which it has the ability to pull a log or a number of logs with that chain because they're so powerful, now they replace that log chain with a rope. And in the mind, it's like, here, so you think you're free. And believe it or not, they say with a lot of wild animals that once they break out of the cage or break past that barrier, that's why you'll immediately see them in a wide open run. Because once they go past that barrier, their first instincts is to run. Because I got past these boundaries. What do you think about something like that, Matt?
Well, I think it's like you know, there's a lot of psychological studies on human beings with those types of things. And you know, as someone who's like watched and changed politically over my life so far, and I'm sure we all have, and thought of those things, I agree with the thought that you definitely can get into a state of mind that is self-defeating. Like that's something that can be trained to you by the people that you're around, and it's definitely good to be around people that can see the optimism in life and see the optimistic way out. And that's why we tend to gravitate and go, wow, this person, whether it's a politician or somebody big that's really like getting traction and saying things, they're normally saying things that people normally don't, you know, like
Right.
with a charismatic attitude or whatever it may be. So it's important to think if you're putting yourself in a system that's taking things away from people, or in a system that's making the world better for people,
Right.
right? For everyone. Because as all of us grow and the bar is raised higher for everybody, you're only going to get a better version of humanity. And we've seen that with history. Very long amounts of human history. So anytime there's opposition to growth, there's war and pain and misery. But what comes from that opposition is that growth. That at the end of all of those things, normally humanity comes out on the side of growth, even if it takes a while. And so I think we're in one of those areas now where there's massive amounts of opposition going on. And if you're connecting to the negativity aspect of that, I ask that you just like disconnect from it. And that's what I had to do. Right. Cause we all went through the 2020 cycle, right? We all went through that. Um, we've all went through the political cycles from before that, or the world cycles with COVID and everything. It's really hard to keep yourself optimistic if you're connected to the way things are being talked about now, right? So you have to like put yourself into circles, and I think we're making one here. And that's
Yeah.
why I do want to like make a turn to more optimistic stuff, because I think that that's something that people really do get from you, Dad, and get from this stuff with all of us, is that even though things can be really bad, we still have that optimistic thought that they'll get better. And it's important to keep that perseverance regardless of the circumstances. And in the situations that we're currently in right now, I think that the breath of fresh air that you could be for your friends and family is to be that person,
Right.
to be like, things have always been all right. Everything will be okay. Yes, things are not the way that we wish that they were right now, but we are getting there. That it's a process of getting there. Every step is a process of getting there,
And it's
even with
pushing those
opposition.
boundaries that like you're saying, Matt, that we need to do in order to go to the next level. The beauty of our country is that, okay, yes, there are the people that are the naysayers. We're good where we're at, but how do we get better and better and better and gooder and gooder? It's because we
Right.
have to, you even say this, Robert, all the time: step outside the box.
Right.
Get out of the box. There, John Tier in the chat pointed out something called the Pike syndrome, where we make assumptions or feel victimized by our environment and fail to push past our self-imposed barriers of limitation.
Right. So we
Oh my
actually
goodness.
are on here talking about freedom. And what a lot of people don't realize is that, a majority of the time, the cell that we actually are seeing, or the things that are holding us back, or the lack of freedom that we have, are actually imposed on our own mind. It's like when people tell you,
Yeah.
because I remember when Matt and Kyle were really, really young, and now all of a sudden it comes to grips to them that they're getting to the age where they need to move on with their lives. A lot of us contemplate 18 when the world says you're an adult. You know what I mean? So
You can go to war and pay taxes, basically. I
yeah, you
wouldn't
can go
consider
to
any
war and
But you
pay
age an
can't
adult.
taxes.
drink or vote.
Yeah,
Exactly.
really, really interesting. And so again, some holding back. but the concepts always come back where, Matt and Kyle used to say, well, listen, if I wanted to get a job, I would need to go to college, and I can't go to college because I'm homeschooled. And there's these things that only if only, like Craig talked about. It is bizarre. It is bizarre for me, being in front of virtually millions and millions of people. I've been in front of live, and to sit across from somebody and have them share with you their limiting beliefs of the prison that they created. And guess what? There is no way you can tell them that they're in a prison, because they created that. And they're saying, like, well, there's only one way or one journey to where I gotta go. And so that's when all of a sudden, I'm not smart enough. I'm not quick enough. This will take too long. All these things come out. And I was telling Kyle the other day, because Matt had shared an article with me, is that virtually every place in the United States right now is trying to hire people, and they can't. They can't find the people. So what I love about people that are free thinkers, people that think outside the box, here's a problem. We have to solve this problem. So now there's companies out there that are these companies that find people to help the company get new employees, right? And now they're saying that you don't even need a high school diploma, that this company now knows the positions they want to fill. So they'll now educate that person in how to do that specific job.
Yeah,
So
I mean, this exists right now. People don't
Yeah.
realize this, Dad, but there is a massive amount of job openings to train AI. And what does that mean? And it requires barely any education. And it pays well. Google, all these companies are hiring for it. $60,000 a year jobs. You just have to go through stuff. All you're doing is sitting in front of a computer and telling the AI, this is this and this isn't this. You're teaching it how to do these things. And I've watched people get these jobs and they're like, I went to college for this, and I got out of college and I'm in debt, and I can't get a job over 35,000 a year, even though I have a degree in computer science or anything like that, right? Not a good example, but
liberal arts. It's like everybody wanted a degree in liberal arts.
Yeah. Well, as you go through all this stuff, you realize certain jobs come, certain jobs go. And one of the newest things that everybody is going to have to get used to is AI taking all of those jobs, but then creating a bunch of jobs and training it how to take those jobs.
Yeah.
That those jobs exist right now, that you can go get one of those jobs right now, where you, instead of working as a tax consultant, could help train an AI to say yes or no, this is right or this is wrong, and get paid more than doing someone's taxes. Training an AI how to do taxes.
Which sounds funner to me. It sounds funner to me to take my expertise and train an AI or a computer how to do what I know how to do, instead of actually doing the work itself.
Well, that's where, like, that's the ultimate bridge to everyone losing their jobs, is that there's a bridge in between the other side, which is everybody taking your job because they use AI and you don't. It's no different than someone going, I'm going to get to work, but I got to get on my horse and I'll be there in 5 hours. And someone goes, well, I bought a car and I'll be there in 15 minutes. It's like, they're going to hire the guy that's going there in 15 minutes, not the guy that takes 5 hours to get there.
Or the other thing too, Matt, is the people that are in the coal mining industry or the gas consumption, fuel consumption, gasoline industries, and supposedly the electrical industry, electric cars are taking over, or electricity is for heat as opposed to coal. And because like coal puts out emissions, gas put out emissions, and electric is clean. It's, they're going to lose their jobs. And there's so many people on the East Coast in states where coal is the main business of
like
the
coal
state.
country. Yeah.
Coal country. Exactly. Yeah. And, yes, the representatives who live in that area are fighting hard to keep those jobs because those people, have had those
Black,
jobs for
yeah,
years.
they got
And
black lung disease. Yeah, it's like
exactly, Robert. And so here, there are government officials that have introduced bills that will help them transition. But do they want to do that? Do they
They'll have
really want to
to.
go through that?
Yeah. Well,
Eventually,
it's
yes. But
right.
right now, it's because of, all right, going back to our last podcast,
Sure.
perspective. It's the perspective of, I've been doing this since my grandpappy's been doing this.
yeah.
And,
Right.
it's like, what else am I going to do? But like Arthur says, Arthur Wainio in our chat, plenty of jobs for pilots right now, huge pilot shortage. Well, just let's not say only pilots, but for all of the new technologies that are out there, all of these new things that are coming out there, we just have to go in that direction.
I know one thing, that a plane has the ability, and has for years, to land and also take off. So when you really look at airplane destroying or getting in wrecks, it's always 100% human error. And it's like, so it's just crazy to me that the pilot fell asleep, or the pilot wasn't paying attention, or the pilot did something wrong with the controls. And if you would just allow the jets, the new Boeing jets that are out, to land themselves and take off themselves, because once they're in the air and they get to 30, 40,000 feet, depending on if they're going north or west or east or south, then they kick in the autopilot. And it's like, it's just mind boggling to me
Well, yeah,
that,
they do that. I think they do that, Dad, because of liability.
yeah,
I think it's very easy to, even if the pilot didn't make a mistake and it was mechanical error that took the plane down, I mean, wouldn't it be easier to push the liability onto the pilot than to push it onto a whole company that's worth billions of dollars?
still
Look how
class.
much money was
It-
paid out by Boeing for the 737 MAX incidents.
yeah, it's
Right.
still a class action lawsuit against the plane. It's
Yeah,
still
no, yeah,
it's
for
still a
sure.
class action lawsuit against the company that bought it.
But yeah,
So they
it's
immediately go after Boeing, and they go after United. It's like,
well, it always becomes a news article, and sure, some people do get through that process, but I'd venture to think that there's a lot that don't either.
right.
Like there's a, unless if it's like catastrophic news, right? Like I'm sure the submarine people, if they hadn't all signed waivers, their families would definitely be going after that company, although I don't
They're
know
still
what they would get out of it.
they're still going to, they're still going to, but a lot of people don't realize that the guy that started the company was also in the sub, or the submersible. So, it's hard to go after. Yeah,
Well,
a lot of people don't know that.
Mhm.
They don't mention it either. I would be mentioning it. The guy that started the company died also in the submersible sub. It's like, wow.
it probably is not a good idea for the company to mention that. It's
Especially
like,
if they want to
listen,
continue.
So
yeah, which they
getting
will.
back,
People are surprised, but
yeah.
they're like, "Oh, the submarine collapsed. Yes, it was bad. Yes, they'll do better next time." But that company may still exist, and eventually 20 years from now, maybe we'll all be taking submarines and be like, "Oh, you remember that one that had that happen way back when?" Because that happened with airplanes too.
Oh, of
But
course.
Mhm.
like at the same time, I don't need to. Listen. I think seeing the Titanic in VR is a easier and less life threatening possibility than going to the bottom of the ocean and seeing it through a glass window in darkness. Like I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good on that one.
So when you talk about the cost, we were talking about the cost of freedom, the freedom and what it
Sure.
costs. What what do you believe in my opinion? Um, because I still, and I don't beat myself up on this, because I used to be a professional at beating myself up in my younger years. So I don't do that anymore. I recently seen an interview with Tom Hanks, and he was with a bunch of other actors. It's in that thing, Matt, that you and Mom like to watch, where
I
all
like
the,
the actors roundtables,
yeah.
Hollywood Reporter.
And so
Mm.
they asked each actor what they thought the most important lesson they ever learned. And Tom Hanks said, "This too will pass." And he said, "It works on good and bad." But again, I'm talking about freeing your mind, where you're either constantly upset that you felt like you were dealt a bad hand. And so everyone's got it better than you. So this is what is the cost to you, your life? Because I know what my life was like when I put myself in my own mental cage. I wasn't free. And so, I'm a victim. I need to blame everything. If you only knew how I was abused when I was a kid. And so you think of the cost as a human being of you not letting yourself out of your own cage that you created.
And I
Yeah,
think,
just
isn't that the way, what maybe we're supposed to be directing this podcast to?
sure. Yeah, I think it's a lot of people don't know how to do that. Like, obviously, you talked about that earlier too. It's like you kind of can be trained to create the cage and then live in it, like the elephant. Um, I would say one of the best things that I did to help get out of my cage, which I'm still in cages and certain things, absolutely, I'm human,
Yeah.
but is to give yourself a break from that. Like, actually go, this week, I'm going to take this week and I'm going to let myself out of the cage just to see how it feels. I'm going to allow my mind to roam instead of be trapped by all these things. Give it a
Right.
day, 24 hours if you can't give it a week, right? Like, maybe you have a lot of things going on that keep you in that cage, but you can give yourself hours out of it and train your mind to be more comfortable with not thinking so much, not thinking so much about all of this stuff. Um,
Everything.
yeah, another really good way of doing it is to just reinvent yourself. Doesn't mean you don't have to deal with the trauma that you've experienced or the things that you've gone through, because it will come up eventually if you don't. But a lot of people idolize people that have reinvented themselves,
Yeah.
right? And we all
The
want to do
comeback
that. We
story.
all
The
They'll even
comeback
rename them.
story,
Yeah, they'll
man.
rename themselves even, like someone will become an artist and they'll go, listen, he was in high school and college and he was this way. He was always kind of, or she was always kind of this way, but now she's Lady Gaga, right? Like, now she's this person. And that doesn't mean that she can't step away from that person, which it looks like she kind of has to a certain extent, at least the persona that was that person. But reinventing yourself allows you to experience parts of your personality that you were maybe frightened to experience before.
Matt, can I
Us
kind of
us
piggyback?
old
No, absolutely. I'm looking for you guys to do that.
Okay, okay,
yeah,
go ahead.
the old guys would call that a road trip. It was always
Right.
funny because the most exciting thing that happened for me is a bunch of us were gonna drive in a car and go to another city that we'd never been to. That was like, because we're not talking about airplanes being in every city, you know what I mean? So it was the road trip. And I could always remember that there would always be somebody in the group that would say this. It's like, listen, when we show up in this city, you get to be whoever you want to be.
Well, it's funny, back then, no one could look you up. So it is actually true.
Yeah. I was gonna follow up with you, Matt, on what you just kind of said, because okay, if we're gonna go to, freedom isn't free. Um, if you want freedom, didn't you have to experience something that held you back, that put you in your cage, so that you can find whatever it is that you need to get in order to get that freedom of being away from that?
Sure, I think that's what pain is meant to be. I
Yeah.
think
Or
pain, depression, those things are all things to experience in life, just like happiness. Because if you allow yourself to experience those things and process them instead of avoiding them, then you can realize, oh shit, this is all just part of the whole experience of being human. And
exactly.
the happiness part is just as important, right? Like, when you're in happiness, actually allow yourself to be present and experience it. Don't whittle it down, with all of the stuff from before. Like, actually be present with it. So,
Yeah.
sadness
What
too.
Yeah, what gets you to the point, and we always teach this. It's like from each grade in school teaches you always something new, and then or even after school when we go through these revelations, here's what we've known up to this point. But then all of a sudden, somebody introduces this new idea that helps to expand our mind, that helps to open us up, that helps us to get over this hump that is blocking us. Isn't that freedom also?
Yeah,
And we
right.
had to go through that
Mm,
experience to get to that point.
There
right.
was a deal just recently talking about how much the world is changing, but in the last 5 or 6 years, the amount of people that want to get into the military has gone radically down, right? And they said the reason that is obvious, but they were saying that 65% of the people right now in America that want to be in the military can't get in. And listen what it is. One is your weight and the amount of energy that you have. Two is your ability to read. And three is the ability to understand math. So right now, our military is taking people that couldn't pass those three parts and they're retraining them so they can pass to get into boot camp. That is the scariest, pardon my language, the scariest shit I have ever heard. That our school system right now, which if you guys can look it up, not a conspiracy theory, but our school system was designed by the Rockefellers. They're the ones that put up the funds to put together a school system to teach you how to be a very good employee. You get up earlier than you want, you get on public or personal transportation, or you walk, you go to an institution that rings bells and tells you to show up when you're supposed to show up. And if you don't, you get tardy. And what's tardy? Detention. You get too many tardies, and now we're going to take some of your personal time and we're going to make you spend it with us because you won't pay attention. We'll tell you when to go to lunch. We'll tell you when to have breaks called recess. And then you get back on public transportation. So let's teach people how to not have critical
Critical thinking.
Critical.
thinking. And what we'll teach them is just to perform for a grade. So when they get out, now they can perform for a paycheck. And so design this whole system, but to think that this 200 plus old system is releasing kids out into the world that can't pass a basic reading and math test to
Well,
get into the
yeah.
to get into the frickin' army.
You
In
have to
my day,
incentivize them to do it.
in
Yeah.
my day, when you were that kid that got in too much trouble, you showed up in juvenile detention, and the judge would go, pick one. You're going to jail or you're going into the military. It was like, wait, I don't read very well. I don't know math very well. I'm not in that good a shape. No, you're going to the military.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the kids are not fit enough to get in the military and they don't have the basic reading and math skills to defend our country. What the hell is going on?
Do you remember the movie Wall-E?
Oh, yeah, I just watched it, like, a few weeks ago.
Yeah,
Great movie.
where this big giant mega corporation owned everything and did everything for people, and they're traveling in space to try to find this new place to live, although they've been in space for like 3, 4 generations. So all their bodies are flabby and they're in chairs. They don't think for themselves. The AI in the spaceship has always thought for them, computer controlled, climate controlled, done everything. And then all of a sudden they find this one little thing to get them to go back to Earth so they can live their lives again. And it's like all the programming that was done affected them in such a way that yes, they grew big, they were lazy, they didn't do anything. It was all done for them.
Wow.
Oh, it's an interesting thought experiment, and there's a few science fiction stories that play around with that utopia version of humanity, right? Like where all of our needs and things are taken care of how we act. And it's, if you ever go to like a really like healthy habitat for animals and you see the animals actually like have all this space and everything and all their needs are taken care of, you it's no surprise then that their violence is less than a wild animal would be because they need the
Right.
violence to survive.
Right.
The
Mhm.
So then to think that the more that our needs, because we are animals too, the more our needs are met, the less we have to survive, the less violent we'll be. So so the interesting thing about the freedom of that stuff that you're talking about, Craig, is like, of course, personally, we could all like think that we're like incredibly wicked smart and in control of ourselves. But the reality is that we are no different. There's a reason that they test a lot of brain experiments on animals. And the reason they do that is because we are animals and they can't test it on humans because that's kind of messed up. Apparently it's not on animals, but you got to test on something.
Yeah. Unless
So,
Pete is involved, but that's another
right, of
story.
course.
Or
But yeah, it's
Terry's involved, we're in
right.
trouble.
Okay, yes.
So yeah, so you end up in these situations where human beings, just like animals, are accepting of freedoms being removed for comfortability.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think when you talk about the school system, Dad, being set up the way it was set up because that's the way our society is set up. It's
I
not
agree.
necessarily a training on being an employee, I think, although I get that opinion. I think it's more of a understanding that not every human being is going to be like a LeBron James, and you need to have some type of system there so society will still work. And that system is around making people comfortable. The problem with that is the moment they're not comfortable, it becomes more and more of a realization, and the less they're gonna do it. If you have a mouse and he has to go through all of these things to get a piece of cheese, after he's already gone through all this shit before and had to do less to get a piece of cheese, he's gonna be pissed.
Yeah.
He might not even go look for it. And that's where we're at right now. So you wonder why people don't want to work and everything, or why kids can't get into the military, like you said, and it's incentivizing them to do it
Right.
because we're just animals. You have to incentivize it. So if the incentive to go into the military is to be shipped away from your family to a place where we're not at war, and then you come back with all of this trauma and you're not taken care of after the fact, we just had a whole generation go through that. So
Yeah.
everybody else is like, I don't think so. So that's why I think the military things are down outside of the reasons you stated. Obviously, health, another one of those comfortability things, right? It's easier now to eat unhealthy than it's ever been. Therefore, you have more unhealthy people than ever because we're comfort-based animals.
Right.
So freedom is ordering a Big Mac and not having to cook dinner, not go to the grocery store and get it. And we accept that at the cost of our own health. So it's like a lot of these systems are hard to break because you have to mentally tell yourself to be less comfortable. And who the fuck is like okay with doing that most of the time?
I remember going over to the Carousel of Progress at Disneyland,
Right?
where a great big beautiful tomorrow, computers will free us from doing all of these different things, and how great tomorrow will be. And this, the carousel, I think, finished its run at Disney in about like, mid 70s or 80s. And yes, the computer has done a lot of things for us, but look what that at the cost of what freedoms, especially now when we want to think of, okay, the privacy, freedom of speech, where you have people saying things that they shouldn't say, or, here on the internet, things like that. It's like, okay, yes, the idea was there. The freedom to do things or the freedom not to do things was there, but at what? And the four-letter word that we keep going back to, cost.
Yep.
Mhm. Dad?
I'm
I feel like I'm taking up a lot of time talking, so I want to pass it
No,
on to
no,
you guys.
no. I think why our podcast works so well is because of the respect that all three of us has for each other. It's
I
like,
agree.
yeah,
But I also want to give you guys the freedom to talk and share. So,
yeah. Well, no, I didn't feel like you were taking too much time.
all right, good. Then
You were
That
making salient
I'll
points.
respond
yeah,
Yes.
to this.
yeah.
But one of the things I wanted to bring up, right, is this whole thought that the reason that we're okay with accepting less freedom is for comfortability. And there's this one book that I love and adore, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And in the book, there's a robot, and the
You
robot's
ever
name
read
is
that, Craig?
Marvin.
People will just no, I have not read it, and I'm going to get a lot of feedback from it because I know of it. I should
Yeah.
read it. Go
It's
ahead.
it's
I'm
fine
sorry.
if you haven't read it. There's been a movie, the movie's so-so, but it's still okay. I definitely recommend at least watching that. But in it, there's two things that kind of happen in the story. One, is that there's this machine that has all-knowing, all-wise everything. And so everybody collectively in the universe has built this machine to answer the number one question, and the number one question of why we're all here. Now, I don't want to spoil the whole story for you guys, so I'm not going to say what the answer is. I'll leave that as like a tease on why you should watch or listen or read it or listen to it. But Marvin's in this, and he's a machine, he's a robot, and he's known as like the paranoid android. He's like depressed and has all these issues through the whole
Wow.
story. And it kind of goes back to if you had all the things at your disposal, would you really want them? Right? Or would you just want to be comfortable? If you had billions of dollars right now and you could start and do whatever you wanted to do in your life, would you choose to go to the moon, or would you choose to be comfortable in the nice house and have everybody you know taken care of? It takes a different type of person to push through that extreme level of uncomfortability, whether it's losing things, everything. And I think that's my point with the LeBron James stuff, is like a majority of us are willing to forgo those freedoms because not all of us in certain areas are that way, where we're willing to give up freedom, or we're willing to be uncomfortable for that eventually. And so financially, I know you could take this, Dad, but financially, it's a really big thing because
Yeah.
there's this plateau mentally, and you can look this up, of about 70, I think it might be 100,000 now a year, where mentally there is no benefits to making more money. That psychologically, once all your needs are met and you're comfortable, pushing through that ceiling and creating things that become $1 million ideas or $1 billion ideas or motivating or doing any of that stuff actually takes a special kind of mind and person to pull off. Like, it really does.
I have really, really, really discovered that about myself. And that might sound bragging, you know what I mean?
Well,
But
confidence is important.
yeah, um, I'm obsessed with I'm obsessed with being better. I'm obsessed with knowing more. I'm obsessed with evolving. And so, when we even make a statement about, Matt, you're always grounding me. That's why you and I get along so well. And it's like, well, listen, I guess the next goal after 1 million, 2 million a year is 10 million a year. And it's like, Matt's like constantly going, Dad, what else could you do with that kind of money? Why do you need to push yourself so hard? To make that kind of money instead of just, kicking back and enjoying it. And the deal comes back to me mentally is, who said that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like,
You have a purpose. Like, the purpose
yeah,
stuff's important.
yeah. So, that's sort of that statement where there are unique people. And I can honestly say that I found that with myself through all the trauma as a child. It was like, I don't want you to feel sorry for me, but it's like it became very obvious to me that I was alone. it became very obvious to me that no one around me considered me anything of value. And so it was this burning desire that I had to build that own desire of myself liking myself, me being impressed with myself. And so when I constantly do this drive of getting gooder and gooder and pushing myself out of comfort zones of stuff that I don't know, it's like I enjoy that. I actually I heard a interview with Joe Rogan and Mike Tyson, and Mike Tyson said it's the ability to do the ugly word called discipline. And he says, where I was able to trick myself is I told myself that I love discipline. So I made it fun. I made the discipline things that I would do every day, and people would go, who would ever want to work out that hard? And he would say, I love working out. I love getting better. You see what I mean? So you sort of seen that that was in him, because after all the stuff with boxing, he's still recreating himself. You know, people don't know that right now Mike Tyson is worth more than he ever was as a boxer, because people like his weirdness, his uniqueness, his authentic part of who he is.
He's had like a resurgence and redemption, and that came from ego, death, and humility,
Yeah, yeah,
which
totally.
is something we all are capable of doing. You
Right.
know, like I don't know it whether it's wanting more freedom, um, or some people trying to take away freedom from other people. Like, regardless, I think the best way that you could live truly free is to just allow that to happen, and like eliminate the element of yourself that needs to have so much control over what that is. Like, it's not going to be that way for everybody. Like, I don't want to spout bullshit here and say that it's easy. It
No,
isn't.
I I I
But
I that's what I was saying when,
right.
so Matt's been around me long enough to watch me struggle with consistently pouring my heart out to people of how they could actually create the person they've always dreamed they could be.
Mm.
And they would just rather be comfortable in their cell.
Well,
And that's
I would
their
also
freedom
I would
at the
also
cost of getting there.
right, but I would also say, and this is a thought to think about, is that mentality, the freedom for you from that data, and I've seen this happen with you, is the ego death part, that what you think that is for them doesn't matter.
I now know that.
Right, like that, and same for me. I've learned from you through that process of watching you, of going, okay, even though I really want this for them, maybe the way that I want it for them is not the way they want it for themselves, and
Right.
that's their decision, and I need to set my ego aside of wanting that for them and let them be or do what they're capable of doing or wanting to do. And I've watched my dad like grow so much as a mentor, as if he wasn't already one of the best mentors to have before,
Right.
by having that like ego death in a sense of, and I've seen way more happiness from you and freedom from you too, dad, of just having that place of just going, I will teach them the things that I have learned myself that have benefited my life greatly, financially, freedom wise, everything. And I'm going to give them this knowledge and let them grow in the way that they want with it,
Yeah.
and direct them if they need it. And that's what the breakthroughs are for. Part of the inner circle is to have kind of more of a directed approach to that. But at the same time, even in those, I've seen you be a lot more lenient, I'd say,
Yeah. Yeah.
in ways where you might have hit them head on things, because I think you've accepted more that they're going to do what they're going to do at the end of the day. And you really have no control over that whatsoever. Right.
Well,
So,
thank you, Matthew. That meant a lot. And one of the things is that was without a shadow of a doubt, Matt, my largest form of unhappiness.
mm,
It's like, if it's really true that we become, we create and make expand the thing we focus on the most. it was me saying, man, it's crazy to me that I'll run into people and they got all these beliefs in their mind on how they're going to create success. But if whatever they're doing and all the stuff they're doing, including spending hours on social media or hours on Netflix, if they get pleasure from that, if they're a happy person, you know what I mean? And that's really the limit that they want to go. You know
They're
what I mean?
comfortable. Right.
It's like they don't want to be out of that comfort zone. It really got me because I always heard Les Brown talk about, when he caught cancer. And then all of a sudden he said, the lady that didn't know who he was, that was his therapist at the center, the cancer center, said, you're just spending all of your time trying to help people that don't want to participate in their own rescue. And it
Boom.
was like, damn. So he's quite a few years older than me. So it's like, when you really get the knowledge that you have and you work on that knowledge and it makes you happy and it makes you fulfilled, then of course you want everyone in the world to have it. And the other thing that I've seen that's really, really bad programming, in my opinion, that's my opinion, is that this instant mentality of people. It's like, I've always brought up the whole thing about, why would you want to be an apprentice for someone for free to learn the art and skill that they have? And people are like, no, you need to pay me for that. It's like, I want heat out of the oven before I put the wood and the fuel in it. That, we've totally lost this whole concept that that it cost not only in time, but it also costs on some sacrifices to hang around people. So I seen this instant mentality in a cartoon on a post on social media, and it showed a guy in a cell, and he had a small stick, and he was trying to get this loaf of bread. You know what I mean? And right on the other side of the jail cell, same distance away, was actually the key to the cell. And you could tell that our instant society, instant food, instant gratification, instant endorphin and dumps by getting likes and loves on social media. These companies know what the hell they're doing. And their goal is to get your attention, to get your amount of time that you're spending with them. And they want you going for them little bites of bread that gets you
Mhm.
to the next hunger, to the next hunger, to the next hunger. They don't want you to have freedom. So, in my belief in the world, there are keys to the kingdom. There are keys to happiness and fulfillment. And a majority of us are just programmed to be focused on the instant and wanting things so fast and so quick that we're not willing to pay the cost and the sacrifice of doing something ordinary to become extraordinary.
Mhm.
We don't want to take that condensed discipline of just doing something simple each and every day, as Jim Rohn said it. It's these people that do these small little frickin' things, these small things on a consistent discipline time over amount of time, that all of a sudden you say, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. One bite at a time. And it's like, that task is just too big. So it immediately puts them in uncomfort and also puts them in procrastination. I'll put that off till tomorrow.
Right.
And Robert,
No,
you know what?
yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No,
No,
I know it's just we just hit an hour and a half too, so
Yeah.
I know we'll have to wrap things up soon. One of the things that I want to say to your point, Dad, is like I still do this all the time, right? So in the last 2 days, every year I make a pledge to myself that I'm going to read a certain amount of books, and for the last 2 or 3 years, it's been 52. So it's like a book a week, right? And I'm an avid reader, not to say you have to be, but I just love it. But this year has really, really not been a good reading year for me. And it's because of exactly what you said, Dad. I've been incredibly distracted with everything that gives me immediate gratification, so watching things, that type of stuff, than taking the time to let like a story unfold or a point or thoughts, deep thoughts and things to, because that requires more effort of me, my whole attention, reading a book. And so I haven't been doing as well this year. And so I kind of got down on myself about that. And I'm going, okay, I've read 5 books and it's been 7 months when I did 54 last year or whatever. So I'm really lagging. And then I remembered this video on YouTube by Max Joseph, one of the guys that was on Catfish, and I'll link it. How to Read More Books in the Golden Age of Content. Such a great book on this exact subject. And what he does is he takes all these big books of like 1,000 pages and explains how if you just sit down for 15 minutes a day and read, how you could eliminate 3 of these 1,000-page books in a year with 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remembered that. And I stopped beating myself up and went, I'm going to spend the next couple of days reading 30 minutes. And of course, those 30 minutes turn into an hour because I like
Sure.
doing it. I realized and I just finished a 700-page book this morning. And I realized the feeling that I had after finishing it, at least for me, because I love it. I'm like, why did I keep getting that immediate feeling when it was so shallow in comparison to that feeling of finishing something that I really wanted to finish? And I think it's very easy to have that hijacked and want that immediately.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like uh, discipline, going back to taking the comfortability of just putting on a show and the uncomfortability of sitting down and forcing myself to not have. So with a show or a movie, you can be on your phone still. There's still shit you could do, right?
Right.
With a book, you can't do that. You have to have your whole attention on it. So taking that time really made me realize again, and we all do this, right? We go through great patterns of exercise and then we stop exercising completely.
It's like everything in life.
Right. And so it's like sometimes you need to let go of some of the freedom of getting to do everything you want and the comfortability of that sometimes to have the uncomfortability to get yourself to the place you want to be. And that's kind of my last thought. And I know, Craig, you want to say some stuff
Yeah.
too.
What I wanted to piggyback right here on what you just said, Matt, and it also applies to what Robert said just a little bit ago. What is freedom to you? Is
Right.
it giving up and letting things happen? Because sometimes that's what you have to do to get that freedom. You explained it perfectly, Matt, by saying, okay, yes, I was putting all this stress on myself. Well, what does the stress do for the body? It does not make it feel good. It becomes a dis-ease to the body. But when you give up and you go with the flow, you let it go, you think of it and look at it another way. Isn't that freedom on its own? Because you now are like, oh my God, I
I
can
love
do
this. Yeah.
this.
No, I
I've
love
got
this.
this.
Yeah. Cause like I had a thought about this the other day and I shared it with Hannah. And it's like one of those things where the thought hit me and I immediately was like, I gotta remember this and write it down and remind myself of this as often as possible, how important the mind is and the way that you think. So we have a pool in our apartment complex. If I go to the pool or to the beach and my hair is messed up, leaving the pool or even at the pool, I don't care because it's like I'm at the pool, I'm at the beach. Who cares? Everybody's hair is messed up. We're getting in water, we're getting out of water. It's like, who's going to get a good hairstyle or whatever going on? So I wake up and I have to take the dogs out immediately. And I'm like, oh shit, I better throw a hat on or something in my hair. And I'm like, why can I give myself the freedom at those moments in time mentally to not think about it? But in this moment, when I just got up, I'm not going to allow myself that freedom because I need everybody else to like judge me based off of what. And I
Yeah.
thought about that for a second. And of course, I didn't throw on the hat or anything. I just went out and did what I had to do with the dogs. And it was like a realization for me again that the mind is so powerful that we kind of put it, like Dad, you said, in these prisons on purpose for really no reason. No one around me is going to think I'm crazy if my hair is messed up. They're going to think it's 7 a.m. and you just got up from bed. That's what they'll think. And even if they weren't thinking that, why do I care what they think so much, right? because of my ego, because I want them to perceive me in a certain way. I don't want to have an ego, so I need to eliminate that. And so we all can give ourselves that freedom anytime we want to. And we do all the time with certain things. I'm not going to work out today because it was a long day. Right?
I'm just watching Netflix. I ain't doing anything today.
Right. Is that your freedom?
Right. It is.
Is that your freedom?
Even though we can go back to progress.
Well, it was my freedom until I couldn't use Matt's password and email anymore.
Right.
Then
until they stopped allowing everybody. Yeah. So I don't know. I know.
Account.
Right. I know that we could talk about this forever.
I'm done. I'm done.
And I also want to thank you so much, Corky, for your donation, and thank you so much, Bill, for your donation. Appreciate you guys.
You guys.
Always.
Did you
so
guys
enjoy
this? Did you guys enjoy this? Do some thumbs up or some hearts, please, or something.
Yeah, let us know, because
I enjoyed this. I really did.
Yes,
I did too.
And thank you, Arthur Wainio. Yes, I know I don't have that hair issue. For those of you that are watching on YouTube,
I use it as an example. Like
exactly.
Not everybody has the same issues, but my hair has been more crazy the longer it's gotten. So like I'm more aware of it than I was when it was shorter. So
and I
know we all have those things.
I just want to bring up really quick, Arthur. You know what? When I had the hair that was going south, yes, I had that worry. I had that issue. But then when I realized, you know what? I might look just as good, if not better, without it. And I did it.
You gave yourself that. Yeah. Now you never have to think about it again. You don't have to bully yourself for it or be like, I need to do this or that.
Why doesn't anything ever go north when it gets bad?
That's a good question.
Maybe another question for something down the road.
episode 8.
Why do we always associate? It's like, like standing on the North Pole and wondering.
You love these, Dad. It's not just the idioms and stuff, but it's also like these sayings. Oh, you always throw these out.
Yeah,
and it's funny because me and Hannah now are watching like Below Deck because you and Mom turned us on to it. It's like a reality show about these people that run yachts, and the guy that runs the yacht, the guy that like is the captain, right? He has all of these sayings just like you do, Dad, that you like bring up, and I'm like, what the hell does that even mean? Sometimes you look it up, it exists. Someone said this at some point, and it's stuck, right?
It's like if you're standing at the North Pole, what time zone are you in?
I mean, I'm not the.
It does all the time zones meet there
to know that. It's infinite time. I think that there's a portal up there.
Can you just do a circle and it's 24 hours?
Yeah, that's how we time travel.
Time stands still on the poles. It's an interdimensional dynamic.
Yeah, it really messes with your mind when you think of the theory of relativity and you actually think about the thought that time and the way that it's processed on other planets is different than ours.
Yeah.
And that time isn't as linear as we like to perceive it as, that it's actually just linear based off of our experience here. A little weird to think about. That's a whole episode on itself, though.
How do you know that?
Right.
Craig, why don't you send us out? Matthew and Craig, thank you so much. I that whole theory, whether people believe in it or not, where that two minds are better than one and three are better than two. It's like the consistency of us expanding each other's minds into different thoughts are pretty amazing. So I always love as Matt is my son, that I always see people are like, Jesus, what planet has this kid been living on? Well, if I've ever challenged your thinking, this guy has been around that challenge thinking for 31 years. It's like I'm constantly saying, wait a minute.
Well, I seek it out. You taught me to seek it out too.
Is that really true? Is that really true? So, I hope that when we do these podcasts, we make you think of about a bunch of different areas that you haven't thought of before. And to me, I find that exciting because then you just ask yourself each and every day, I don't even know why I do the stupid stuff that I do. It's like I'll tell people all the time, do you drive exactly the same way to work every day? Yeah. Why? We'll save that for another podcast. Matt hit on it. I think that would be comfort.
Right. No, it's definitely a
So you can
podcast to
eat
do
a
in the
donut,
future.
and you know, scan through your phone and the news and have a cup of coffee and stare with your knees, because you're just, a lot of you have probably done like I have, where you all of a sudden realize that you showed up at the location that you're supposed to go, and you're going like, that's freaking scary. It's like, I pretty much know I didn't pay any attention for the last hour and a half.
And the mind's good at that, right? It can zone out and just do tasks for
Unconscious
sure.
competent. Unconscious
Right,
competent.
right. Absolutely.
Craig,
Well,
close
thank you
us
guys
out.
so much. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, everybody that watched. Appreciate you guys so much. To you, Craig.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for watching. We really, really appreciate you. And we're so happy that you were able to take time out of your busy schedule to join us. Now, you can follow Robert at roberthollis.com. And you can also follow Robert on YouTube at roberthollis.com/YouTube. On Discord at roberthollis.com/Discord. On Instagram at instagram.com/official Robert Hollis. And on TikTok at tiktok.com/@real Robert Hollis. And please don't forget, I know so many ways to follow you, Robert. I mean, we got to do that. You're our GPS to success, our mentor.
Maybe we got to get like a link
mentor.
tree together or something.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yes. And please, ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to like and share this video on YouTube and share it with others. It will also help us grow our community and reach those with ears to hear. Robert's schedule is usually Sunday through Fridays, 12 p.m. Pacific, with Going Live Every Day, where Robert gives you just a brief overview of some of the thoughts he has on in his mind. There's Ask Me Anything on Saturdays at 12 p.m. Pacific, where you get to ask Robert a question about how he has become a success, what his feelings are, things like that. You get to ask him directly. And of course, right here with our How Do You Know That podcast, Wednesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. Thank you all so much. And shout out to our executive producer and visionary, Matthew Hollis. Of course, Robert, bless you, man. Thank you so much and thank you for joining us today. This is Craig Jackman. Please be good to yourself. Be cash. And bye-bye all.
Bye, guys. Thank you. See the Inner Circle members tomorrow.
Love you guys. See you.